Property rock, population shock. There's 1 million people, immigrants, that have left Australia since COVID. Because of COVID, they've been asked to leave. How's that affected property, and what's the future? Stay tuned.
Morning, Mark.
Morning, Billy.
I'm excited, very excited today. I've got a question for you.
Yep.
I think you're quite good at property, Mark. How good are you at horses?
Rotten. Who are you backing today?
I copied one of the boys. I said, whatever you bet on, match that on your account and we'll split the winnings. We'll either win or lose together. So I don't know. But I've got $25 on a little combo to start off with.
It's going to be interesting. We're going to be up Miramar Gardens. I think there's 300, 400, 500 real estate agents there. Catch up and do a bit of betting. And good luck today, everyone. Hope you back a winner.
It's interesting. There's a little bit of rain coming in this morning. And I think that's just gonna just dampen the soil a little bit, get the horses in their element, and I reckon it's gonna be a fun day.
It's always a good day. It's your first Melbourne Cup at work.
That's right. Yeah.
There you go. Now today's topic. Tell us.
Yeah, population shock, property rock. It's we had a little bit of a discussion off air about migration and huge numbers coming into the country and how that looks for property. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about like the government, what they intend to do over the next few years, but also how this looks financially for Australia, Mark.
Yeah, look, it's pretty interesting. Like when I saw that number of 1 million people asked to leave the country over the course of COVID, due to COVID, it was a pretty shocking figure for me when I saw that. My family are immigrants. Northern beaches of Sydney, Australia are full of immigrants. A lot of Australia is full of immigrants, and they've brought some amazing things to this country. They bring amazing work ethic and grit. They bring beautiful, families. They make beautiful families here. A lot of them are key workers. So once you're in Australia as a second generation or third generation, we love to educate our kids and give them a degree and put them behind a desk, whereas immigrants are happy to go out and do the grit and hard work that the country needs. So there used to be an old saying that Australia was built by immigrants, because they were the people that were actually getting up and getting stuff done. They were the labour forces out there. So it's a bit frightening seeing that many of these hardworking, beautiful people asked to leave the country. I guess in a way it was clever because it created more jobs for the locals. But there is a balance now where a lot of people are complaining that they can't find good staff. I hear it in every single cafe, coffee shop, business that I speak with, that it's a problem.
Seasonal fruit pickers, all of those jobs. You talk about key workers, but these guys not only key workers, they're a key part of our country functioning on target with GDP. They play huge contribution for employment in total. And getting those numbers back on track, I think, is going to play a massive part to our recovery as a country. Financially, I think we've done pretty well in COVID. Compared to on the world stage, we have looked after each other. There's been a heck of a lot of stimulus put out by the government for businesses, people that need it. But as we return to some sort of normality, I was reading the migration report put out by the government and how they outline the next 2 years and then years after that. It's really interesting. The numbers speak for themselves.
What do the numbers say?
So they're looking at getting, right now, there's about 160,000 people supposedly coming into the country for migration reasons. Now that's, probably asylum. That's probably a combination of work, family, skilled employees, everything. They're looking to get that up to 190,000 between 2023, 2024, and then 2025, ramping that up to 235,000, which is nuts.
And so I understand, and so people don't know how serious this is. Our growth in society, our population growth is the lowest it's been in 100 years.
Yeah, I think I read ever. I mean, you think it's taken 200 years to get to this point, Mark? I was talking to Glenn about a very, put things into perspective. You look around and you struggle to see a home that's 200 years old. But you go to places like Europe, a lot of places where these people are coming from, and a 200-year-old property is normal. That's pretty much everyone on the street. So it's taken 200 years to get to this point. What the government wants to do between now and 2050, where I think that's the next big benchmark for all these sort of projects. It's massive.
I also read in that last report, Billy, that Melbourne is taking over Sydney in numbers, in population, by 2025 or 28 or 2026, I think the number was. So over the next 4 years, Melbourne will be the biggest city in Australia.
Wow. How does that feel for the East Coast? I reckon that'll take that personally, I think.
I'm taking it personally. But where we're going with this, guys, is I think we're looking at facts in the marketplace with population, with immigration, with growth of population, negative population, what that does to a country, what that does to a workforce, and it all knocks onto property. It all knocks onto shelter. Shelter is one of the most important things that we value as families and people. So affordability. It's been really interesting that the property market's absolutely thrived through these hard economic times of and the last 18 months. But the big question on everyone's lips is when you're looking at this immigration, when you're looking at how hard it is to find crew to get stuff done, what does that mean to property prices and the future of property? If there's less people, is there less demand on housing?
Well, that's it. If you said 1 million people have left Australia, and I know it's a big. That's actually a huge number when you think a population of 27 or whatever, give or take.
Yeah.
But like you said, property prices haven't fallen at all.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that immigrants are more inclined to cluster than they are to second or third generation people. And what I mean by that is it's not 1 million houses taken out of the grid. Often with immigrants, there'll be 3 or 4 of them in one property, or 3 or 2 or 3. Especially in that initial building of your life in a new country, you're more inclined to put 2 kids in one room and be a bit more thrifty. So I think that there's lesser demand than a normal non-immigrant on property. So I don't think they've left a whole of 1 million houses that they've moved out of. I probably think they've left a whole of a couple 100,000 houses that they've moved out of. That has to be taken up by the rest of our population, which is not that hard. So I think that's why rentals hasn't gone down. Certainly because it wasn't that much of a hole to fill.
David's put a comment there.
Yeah. So David's a very talented man. There's not much he doesn't know about or can't do. But yeah, being of Italian background, immigrant background, they have a lot of they put a lot of people into a house, but not lately, David. Not lately. The Italians tend to own a lot of houses now. When they came in the 60s and 70s, they owned one, and now they own four each. So they don't need to put as many people in one room. But if you look at Australia's story with immigration, it's a terrific story. And if you look at the wave of immigration that we've had, every 10 years it's almost been a different wave. So we've had a big wave of Nepalese recently. Before that, I think I'm guessing now, but Philippine. Before that, I'm still guessing it's probably Indian. Before that, it's probably Arabic. Before that, it's probably Baltic. Your Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, Croatia, Serbia, those areas. Before that, it was Greek and Italian, going back now to the 60s, 50s, 60s and 70s. But there's always been this wonderful wave of people coming through our country, and they've just brought so much richness in our culture. So it's interesting to see what the next wave's going to be, buddy.
Yeah, really exciting. I think, and the way this is going with population by 2050, I think they reckon it's close to be mid 30s, high 30s million. Let's say 35 for our numbers. That's a lot of extra people. I do think we actually need to start looking at building a shit ton more property.
Yeah, it's interesting because what we don't realise is if there is a necessity for affordability, so people can afford to rent or afford to buy. To build in affordability into housing in our communities, we need a constant supply, and a good supply and a good pipe. It's not like a tap where you can just turn it on and there's water, as in turn it on, there's just properties. It's like a hose that's 10 kilometres long. By the time you turn it on, it'll take a while before the water gets to you. So by the time, we've just got to be really conscious about planning and building and stuff like that at the moment, because with approvals, if there is that necessity for affordability for real estate because of immigration, and you're talking about some big numbers coming in the future, yes, they've left, but we've almost filled that hole. They need to start turning on some DA approvals, and because that's going to takes about 3 to 5 years to have developed stock occupied before it goes through the sales process, the approval process, the building process, the acquisition process. So building a unit block or building a house subdivision takes time. So I think the government's probably pretty commercially aware of making sure we've got accommodation and affordability built in the next 3 to 5 years ahead of us.
And then the next question, like, where do they put the serious numbers in? You said Melbourne's going to take over the East Coast, Sydney for most populated city. As a country, it makes sense that the mass population is on the coast. There's no serious rivers going through the middle of the country, so people are naturally gravitated towards the water. There's actually a lot of space in our local area, despite what people think. Do you agree, Mark? I mean, you look between here in Terry Hills, or where we're going today, Miramar Gardens. There's a lot of land that can be developed, but is it going to be? That's another question.
Yeah, look, before we wrap up, I think that I think Melbourne's done an amazing thing culturally and population-wise, and it's become a thriving economy and thriving city on the back of affordability. So I think if you're overseas and an immigrant and wanting to grow and wanting to move into Australia, Melbourne's sometimes been a more livable city, and certainly livability and affordability are two very good friends. So I think because Melbourne was quite relaxed on its developing, and Sydney was quite hard on its developing, believe it or not. But I think that affordability builds great cities. And then where it's going to be done is interesting. It's very expensive we naturally think if we want to build more property, we're going to build it out west, but it's actually very expensive because every time you build, you've got to build a hospital, a school, and a shopping centre, and roads and infrastructures and highways. So governments like worldwide, they like to infill in areas. It's easier to make the school slightly bigger and the hospital slightly bigger rather than to build brand new facilities. So I think a lot of the infill that you're going to see with population growth, a lot of the development you're going to see population growth is going to be infill.
Yeah. But yeah, it is always sunny. We're always happy. Can infill and affordability thrive in a place like the beaches, Eastern Sydney, Northern beaches? It's just like silly prices in some ways compared to the rest of the country.
Probably not enough infill.
But will the local government ever allow that? If you know the majority of the population's already paid what they have paid, they can't go infilling all the bushland between here and Terry Hills, like the example before, with affordable living. Or
they don't get a choice.
Or can they?
They don't get a choice. They don't get a choice. So I think state government, you know, you've got your local, state, and federal, and I remember there was some council precincts that were not approving enough approvals in an area, rezoning, pushing through, and actually the state government came in and actually fired the entire councils.
Wow.
So, I think, for mismanagement, not doing stuff as quick, whatever it was. But yeah, I think we will see more. I certainly know Ingleside in our area is earmarked for more. I certainly know French's Forest around the hospital is earmarked for more. So there's more on the way. Warriorwood were coming out of it. We've had a lot of development done, but immigration, guys, that's our chat today about population, immigration, and how it affects property. And it's a big topic.
Yeah, watch this space. We could see some, big added pressure from above.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Billy.
See you, Mark. Good luck today.
See you, everyone. Take care. See ya. Back a winner.